2011, there was a dispute. Atlantic Richfield took a position and the EPA took a different position, and we started work on the consent decree. And within about a year's time of negotiating, we couldn't come to agreement. So the EPA and the state of Montana issued what they called a unilateral order of consent. A unilateral administrative order, UAO. And that instrument, now instead of being PRPs, we were respondents. Butte-Silver Bow and the Atlantic Richfield Company and the railroads, we were now respondents to the unilateral administrative order to do whatever EPA told us to do in terms of the status of the cleanup at the time and what our obligations were under this UAO. And it outlined what we had to do on stormwater, what we had to do on surface water, what we had to do on groundwater, what we had to do on soils, what we had to do on our residential metals abatement program in terms of soils in people's yards, what we had to do in attics. It laid it all out, chapter and verse. I mean, there was an order that was then laid down and signed by the federal government, and we had to sign it. During the period 2011 until 2020, and until we had a CD, we were respondents to a unilateral order. And then during those 8, 9, 10 years, everything we did was under the scrutiny of this unilateral order, and we had to write monthly reports. ARCO had to write monthly reports telling them all the progress we were making on all of the different tasks that we were assigned. And then in 2018, in the January of 2018, all the parties came to what was called an agreement in principle. And that agreement set forth a time frame then to incorporate a set of principles in a consent decree. And so the people who signed on to the agreement in principles, basically Butte, ARCO, and the railroads, UP and BN, we had indicated to the federal government that we were interested in coming to terms on a consent decree. And here are the principles that, the term sheet, if you will, that would be incorporated in that consent decree. And so for 2 years, all of 2018 and all of 2019, we laboriously went through that list of things that were in the agreement in principles and tried to reach agreement on all of them under consent. And that included Butte, Atlantic Richfield, BP, EPA, the Department of Justice, the state of Montana. And the state of Montana was represented in 2 ways, which was always strange, but regardless, the Department of Environmental Quality and the Natural Resource Damage Program. Because the Natural Resource Damage Program, I don't know if you know this about the superfund law, but there's two sides to the law. One is the remedial action that can be ordered by the federal government retrospectively, retroactively, by the way, only a retroactive law on the books. And then secondly, resource damages, natural resource damages, which is a second side, but nonetheless very important side, because Montana, under that side of the law in 1984, initiated a lawsuit against Atlantic Richfield for the lost natural resource damages that occurred, in addition to remediating and mitigating the problem under the remedial side of the law. Atlantic Richfield then was in a lawsuit with the state of Montana on these damaged resources. And then that manifested itself in at least two settlements. One in 1998, where Atlantic Richfield settled all 9 restoration claims and 6 of the 9 what they call remedial claims, or compensatory claims. Excuse me. All 9 compensatory claims and 6 of the 9 restoration claims. And it was $215 million. And in the process, they cashed out of their responsibilities on Silver Bow Creek. So instead of performing the remedial action on Silver Bow Creek, they gave the state of Montana and the Department of Environmental Quality $80 million to do it themselves. And then the balance of that money, $15 million, went to the lawyers and the people that had brought the suit and the Indian tribes. And there was approximately $100 million put in a trust to help mitigate the natural resource damages to the 9 restoration claims that the state had.